So, today's our part 2 of our special report on the Senate runoff elections in Georgia. Last time we covered the race between Perdue and Ossoff. Today we're covering Raphael Warnock versus Kelly Loeffler. We're going to start with the previous elections. The elections held on November 3rd resulted in a 33% lead for Warnock to 26% of Loeffler. There was a third Republican in the race, which is why neither of them broke 50%, which means that this is now going into a second round. That round is going to be on January 5th, and it's approaching fast. Meanwhile, we've had all these stories about the election fraud and so forth. It appears that roughly 70% of Republicans believe in those conspiracies, even though none of the accusations have been realized in front of a court. There was no evidence, no actual material evidence that suggested massive fraud on any account. They had about 50 court cases, and out of those, about 0 succeeded. So this is where it stands, and this is particularly difficult for Republicans to justify voters going to the polls if they claim that everything's rigged and there's no purpose in it whatsoever, which is what Trump has been saying in the recent period, and Kelly Loeffler has been trying to balance on that thin thread, saying, yeah, we don't know if there was fraud. We think there was fraud. There's open investigations. The Secretary of State should resign because of all of these irregularities. But on the other hand, she says, go out and vote for me. So that's problematic. We can see that this was the issue with one of the party opera chicks came to present at Georgia. I think it was in Atlanta, and she had a problem justifying to voters go to vote.
No idea. I was coming to Georgia for that. Yeah.
Switching the votes, and we go there in crazy numbers, and they should have won, but then they still.
Yeah, we have to. We didn't see that in the audit, so we've got to just that evidence I haven't seen. So we'll wait and see on that.
How are we going to do money and work when it's already decided?
It's not decided. This is the key.
No.
It's not decided. First of all, David Perdue still has 100,000 vote lead over John Ossoff right now with the certification. So if you lose your faith and you don't vote and people walk away, that will decide it.
So there's a contradiction there, obviously, and that is also apparent from Kelly Loeffler's numerous appearances since then, where she was asked that question, and they're kind of avoiding and dancing around this issue. So let's dive into figuring out who Reverend Raphael Warnock is. Well, he's a native of Savannah, Georgia. He grew up in public housing as a 10th of 11 children. He has a BA from Morehouse in psychology and an MA and a PhD in divinity and philosophy from Union Theological Seminary that's part of Columbia University. He became a senior pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta in 2005. Before that, he was part of the Abyssinian. He was a youth program coordinator in the or pastor in the Abyssinian Church in New York. Warnock also led a sit-in in Georgia State Capitol advocating expansion of Medicaid in 2014, and he was arrested for that along with others. It was seen at the time. And he chaired the new Georgia Project, a nonpartisan organization focused on voter registration from 2017 to 2020. So that's from his biography. But it's important to though we don't know about policies. He hasn't been in a official elected office before. We don't know what his policy would be like, and I tried gleaming what his positions were, and I got a sense of it, but there's no like summary of his position, so he hasn't really clearly indicated how he would vote or what policy he would suggest in regarding to different areas. But nevertheless, we can kind of get the sense of him from a bunch of things. Here's a piece that Now This did on him.
When your skin is the weapon, there is no right answer. Rayshard Brooks ran and he's dead. George Floyd did not run and he's dead. We have 2.3 million people in American prisons and jails. We have twice that many on probation and parole. Rayshard Brooks was not simply running from the police. He was running from a system that makes slaves out of people, a system that marks people with the name felon. Once you're marked with that, in spite of heroic efforts to redeem your life, that sense of being maligned is inescapable. We close all of the available doors of reentry into a dignified life and a responsible citizenship. And so the outcomes, the high rates of recidivism in our prisons is actually quite predictable. If you have to check the box that says you've been arrested and you can't get a job and you can't get housing and you can't get benefits in order to make your way through college and educate yourself and better yourself, if you've already served your debt to society and you can't vote, that's a slave system. That's American chattel slavery, redux, repackaged for a new moment. This is about the fact that the land of the free is the incarceration capital of the world. It's always been clear to me that it's not my job to walk in Dr. King's shoes or to stand in his shoes. At best, what I've tried to do is stand on his shoulders. It is the recognition that we receive the baton in this great relay race from the generation before us. Dr. King did not spring ex nihilo out of nothing and out of nowhere. He's part of a grand and noble tradition. What most people don't know is that Dr. King's father led a voting rights campaign in Atlanta in 1935. Voting rights law passed due to the work of the next generation 30 years later, 1965. But even King's father had that work passed on to him. If you're engaged in a project that can be completed in your lifetime, you're thinking too small. We're in a moment that really is a moral moment in our country, a moment that requires all of us to think about the values, the high ideals, the grandeur of the human spirit and how all of that ought to be brought to the practice of governing and public policy. The American soul is scarred by what we have witnessed over the last few years, and we need voices of conscience. We need moral voices. Morality for me is a collective experience. It's a group project. It's not worked out by one individual in one moment or even in one period of human history. There are practices that went on for 2,000 years and more, like slavery, but the collective wisdom of the years has helped us to see the immorality of some things that we simply took for granted. Alfred Lord Tennyson, the great poet, said, "Our little systems have their day, they have their day and cease to be. They are but broken lights of thee, and thou, O Lord, art more than they." This project of morality, this project of what it means to be a good person and to build the good society is continuing. It is not fixed in one moment in time, and it is collective. I'm encouraged even in these dark and difficult days because I see citizens, ordinary citizens, standing up. We've been wrestling with COVID-19 all of these months, and then with the killing of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, we found ourselves wrestling again with what I call COVID-16-19, America's ongoing struggle with racism. In the midst of this, we saw a multi-generational, multiracial coalition of conscience pour out into American streets, literally risking exposure to one virus, but masking up in order to do battle against another virus. That for me gives me hope, because it means that the American promise, the idealism embedded in our creeds, is still very much alive in the hearts of ordinary American people. We need to keep marching on through November in order to reclaim the soul of our democracy and make sure that the planet is safe for all of our children.
Oh, I really liked his comparison of the COVID virus to the virus of racial bigotry. You could see that it has a very strong moral compass and a rooting in like a historic sense. He's not someone who looks for immediate solutions or immediate changes, but rather like a historic kind of progression towards a goal. Right. I think that that gave me a really good sense of who he is in human terms. Yet another thing, he hosted a forum for climate change or climate crisis, a conference at his church, and here's a clip of that.
This is a climate crisis, and we just want to make our voices heard and show our concern for our planet, for the air that we breathe, for our concern for each other and our futures. And I think faith is an important mechanism for that, for bringing people together.
Here we are at Ebenezer Baptist Church, spiritual home of Martin Luther King Jr. This place is a big tent for moral concerns, and this is one of the most important moral concerns of our time.
Tonight is a moral call to action on climate change.
Dr. King fought during an era in which water fountains were segregated, white and colored water fountains. Well, at least in those times, the water was the same. Years later, we're still dealing with ecological disaster. In Flint, Michigan, the water is poison.
Where you're sitting now, these are hallowed grounds. For over 133 years, we fought, bled, died, and were jailed many times just to come to a place like this to fight for equality and justice. The
The environmental death toll is expected to rise exponentially as a result of climate change, and the poor will have the worst effect. Those who do this are engaged in the wrong use of our humanity. The right time to do good is right now.
We are in a time of grave danger for ourselves, for our children and our children's children, if we should not act. The fact that half of all the living species on this planet will disappear on our watch when we're assigned responsibility, how do we take on board the meaning of that?
Dr. King used to say that it's only when it's dark that you can see the shining of the stars. Now I think it's time for people of moral courage, people of faith, to let their light shine in the darkness.
Ain't gonna let nobody. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on.
I ask you to think of Mother Earth as a living being, as you are. We are all connected.
Our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a prophet who spoke to the land. Everything here, it exists so that we can exist along with it. We don't care for this earth, we don't care for ourselves.
My friends, our world is burning. Our home is heating up, and we are its arsonists. Here's the beautiful thing about Hebrew. Bira doleket means burning in house, but that same word also means illuminated house. We still have a chance to stand beside God at the window of our burning and beautiful house, to plant our stake in equity and love and sustainability. Im lo achshav ematay. If not now, then when?
Don't you ever believe that the civil rights movement just happened because of black folk and the black church. That's a lie. It happened because of a collective body of people, black and white and brown and yellow and red and gay and straight, that dared to come together.
We still have a choice. I want that future generation to look back at us in our time and ask, how did you find the moral courage to stand up and open your eyes and join together? And the answer is, we decided to fight back. We decided to change policy and save the future.
Now is the time to let our light shine, to raise our voices, to speak truth to power, to speak what Vice President Gore has called an inconvenient truth.
Powerful event. I wish I was there. It was obviously pre-COVID, but I think it's interesting to notice that Reverend Warnock's concepts, where it comes to anything, where it comes to climate or anything else, is coming out of a moralistic view. He's looking at it as not less of an issue of environmental justice as it is the environment itself and its endangerment. So that's pretty interesting. He's often accused by Loeffler as wanting to defund the police, which he keeps throwing at him. Though this is not at all what he has himself advocated for, and I think his position is quite rational and reasonable. Let's see what he had to say about it.
He does not think that police departments, should be gotten rid of. He thinks they play an important role in society, but he does think there are some things that need to be done to make sure that the process works appropriately. Take a listen.
We've built this massive prison industrial complex. It is a beast, and when you build a beast that large, it demands to be fed. This beast feeds on black and brown bodies. Until we dismantle that, until we reinvest in preschools rather than prisons, we will see these kinds of tragic escalations on the street.
Yep. So that sounded pretty reasonable to me, and I hope that we hear that from more people in Senate. So, what do we know about Kelly Loeffler? So, let's see. Basically, she was born in Bloomington, Illinois. She was raised on a family's corn and soybean farm. She got a bachelor's degree from the University of Illinois, Gies College of Business in Marketing, and an MBA from DePaul University. She worked for Toyota as a district account manager, 1999. Worked for Citigroup afterwards and the International Exchange, which is abbreviated to ICE, believe it or not, where she married the CEO, millionaire Jeffrey Sprecher, who's they're still married. Determine about that. She was installed as CEO at BACT, which is a subsidiary of ICE, of that company. Served there since until she left for Senate. When she left, she got a huge bonus that they gave her of, I believe, $9 million, and there was a little bit of a scandal about that, and questioning whether that was appropriate because that has not been done for others. And somehow the company explained that it was appropriate. She helped Intercontinental Exchange, that's the BACT division. She helped them establish and market a credit default swap clearinghouse in the Cayman Islands as a offshore tax haven. So that's basically, to whoever is not familiar with that, it means ways to avoid paying U.S. tax. She created this vehicle for companies to use them as a sort of address in the Cayman Islands in order to avoid paying taxes to the U.S. government. So, besides that, we have we know that she has called herself the most conservative Republican in Senate, which actually isn't quite true. She's not as conservative as she's presenting herself, but this is something that she kind of came up with after she started running against Collins. Doug Collins. She felt that she had to outright him, so she started pretending she's all the way to the right. She is very conservative religiously. She has voted 100% with Trump, in line with Trump, which is something that no other senator apparently has that voting record. But it also poses a question as to her independence. And she just stuck her fate in with Trump's. She opposed assault weapon ban and got an A rating from the NRA. She introduced legislation to bar transgender females from participating in girls and women's sports, and that was in 2020, and the name of that bill was something like Protect Women's Sports or something like that, which is quite deceiving as to what she intended to do there. After Trump contracted COVID, Loeffler tweeted, "China gave this virus to our president, Trump, and First Lady. We must hold them accountable." So I guess that colors her a little bit. Like Senator Perdue, she also called for the resignation of Republican Secretary of State Raffensperger, blaming him for stolen election. And she also sold, just as Perdue has, she sold a massive amount of COVID-affected stocks after receiving Senate security briefing on the pandemic, and there was a question about that. She was not quite acquitted, but she claims she was acquitted. She had an investigation launched against her and some others, among them Feinstein, doing the same thing, and the allegations were dropped by the DOJ, maybe through dirty arrangement agreement not to pursue it, and thereafter the Congressional Ethics Committee also dropped their investigation. So it was dropped. It wasn't really, she wasn't exonerated in any way. This is where she lives. They purchased the biggest, badass house in the area where she lives in Atlanta. I believe this mansion is worth amount, but it was a staggering amount. It's a old style European mansion. Fountains and sports courts, what have you. So the value of this couple is jointly considered $800 million, and it's kind of an interesting thing. Well, when she, like I said, as she was in Congress, she received pandemic briefings, and thereafter a lot of her stocks portfolio changed. She made a big profit in the process, and Republican Doug Collins had something to say about that.
What's bothering me, and I think a lot of Americans, I've been working overtime, taking texts and calls from businesses who are looking to go under, from child and daycare centers who are trying to figure out what they're going to do with the kids that they're not able to keep because of parents are not able to come to work. These are the kind of things we've been dealing with. And so it's very disheartening to think that, information that was possibly acted upon was beneficial to personal benefit and not to the public. And I think as a public servant, our first and foremost job is to always, especially in times like this, is to think about them before ourselves.
Well,
yes, that's reprehensible to sides. Well, there's a portion of the debate that I found.
Thank you so much. Senator Loeffler, when you received the private briefing regarding the coronavirus pandemic, you dumped millions of dollars of stock in order to protect your own investments. And then weeks later, when there came an opportunity to give ordinary Georgians an extra $600 of relief, you said you saw no need and called it counterproductive. Why do you think it's counterproductive to help ordinary Georgians in the middle of a pandemic?
Well, thank you for that question, because I've been completely exonerated. Those are lies perpetrated by the left-wing media and Democrats to distract from their radical agenda. Since I got to the Senate, I've worked hard to deliver relief to Georgians during this pandemic, and I'm continuing to do that. But look what Democrats have done. They have stood for stonewalling relief that I voted for twice in the Senate to deliver relief to families, to farmers, to schools and hospitals. They're playing politics. That's what they're using their lies to cover up. The fact that they don't have a positive agenda to lift Georgians up. They want to defund the police, raise your taxes, implement the Green New Deal that would crush jobs and opportunity. And what I'm working on is making sure that we can get the economy going again, that we can drive forward after this pandemic. And I've been working side by side for my colleagues to make sure that we get that done, and we have delivered results. $47 billion that I brought here to Georgia saved 1.5 million jobs at small businesses.
Reverend, you have 30 seconds to respond if you'd like.
Listen, I do not want to defund the police, and Kelly Loeffler knows it. But she keeps saying this because she wants to distract from her own record. The truth of the matter is, were it left up to her, Georgians would not have received the $600 of expanded unemployment insurance. And they haven't seen any relief in months. And she hasn't done anything. She's done nothing to provide relief for ordinary people, the folks I'm seeing all across this state who are in pain in the middle of this pandemic.
It is quite interesting to watch because she makes so many lies. She repeats so many lies in this segment that it's hard to even focus on each of them and debunk them. But it's interesting to look at her smile, a frozen, phony smile, while she's listening. There's something about her for sure. She accuses Warnock of wanting to defund the police. Like I said, there was no indication whatsoever of such policy that on his part. Not advocated that at all. She calls Green New Deal job crushing, which is exactly the opposite. If anything, that's a job creation program. That's maybe not in the field that she would like. It's not in the field of oil exploration and so forth, but it is a big job creation program, if anything else. So she's reversing it completely. Also, she claims the Democrats obstruct the relief effort, where Democrats are trying to get a larger or more comprehensive relief effort, and she has not really done anything to do that. She instead makes some claims that are that was continued.
In your writings and your teachings, you've repeatedly praised Marxism and the redistribution of income. Can you here and now, for all Georgians, renounce socialism and Marxism?
Listen, I believe in our free enterprise system. And my dad was a small business owner. And during the Great Recession, you know what I was doing? I was leading my church to build a community center where, among other things, we had a financial literacy center that taught people how to repair their credit, create a 700 credit score community, how to create a business, how to buy a home, how to participate in our free enterprise system. Kelly Loeffler, on the other hand, was teaching the big banks how to hide their investments offshore in the Cayman Islands. This is how she spent her career before she went to the Senate. This is what she's been focused on now that she's in the Senate. She was only there 3 weeks. I'm not sure she was fully unpacked when she started dumping millions of dollars of stock trying to protect herself. And she purchased that seat. It's done well for her. The issue is that the people who sold it to her don't own it. And the people of Georgia are coming back to get their seat.
Senator, you have 30 seconds.
Well, predictably, you've just heard more lies from radical liberal Raphael Warnock, who wants to distract from his own words, calling police officers gangsters, thugs, bullies, and a threat to our children, saying that you can't serve God and the military, for his attacks on Israel. You know, What I'm focused on is making sure that we continue to deliver relief. I've already delivered relief for 174,000 small businesses, $7 billion for hospitals. And when the government didn't move quickly enough, I purchased PPE out of my own funds, drove it to hospitals. I donated to hospitals, and I donate my salary to charities across Georgia. I'm here working for Georgia.
She attacks him, repeating lies and just basically mudslinging. He hasn't, in fact, ever spoken in advocacy to socialism or Marxism, as far as I could tell. This is going back to one line in his book where he says that the black community could learn a lesson from Marxists, and I'm not exactly sure what is the implication or what is the connotation of that. I haven't read the book, but this is the source of all these accusations, calling him a Marxist. She keeps, every time that she addressed him in this evening, she called him extremist, and that tells you she doesn't really have much to say about him or his points of view, rather smearing him and name shaming him. So well, there was something interesting that came up with regards to her, because, like I said, she considered herself the most conservative senator, or at least that's the face she's putting on, and she came up with this line of commercials, which I initially thought were parodies, but they weren't. Here's one of them.
Did you know Kelly Loeffler was ranked the most conservative senator in America?
Yep, she's more conservative than Attila the Hun.
Fight China. Got it. Attack big government.
Yeah. Eliminate the liberal scribes.
More conservative than Attila the Hun.
Uh-oh.
Kelly Loeffler, 100% Trump voting record.
I'm Kelly Loeffler. I approve this message.
Wow. First of all, I think they were thinking of Genghis Khan, not Attila the Hun, because they were talking about China in these commercials, attacking China and so forth. And he's not dressed like Attila the Hun. Attila the Hun was attacking Rome. He killed Christians. He did postnatal abortions. I don't know how she's equating herself with it, why she thinks it's a good thing to equate herself with Attila the Hun and somebody who would like execute scribes and so forth, and the obviously the implications here is, the suggestion is clear. So I don't know. I was amazed at that ad, but yes, she has a different perspective. Let's look at campaign finance, which is sometimes indicative of things, because you always follow the money and look at things that way. So basically, we can see that she outspent Raphael Warnock. However, she dipped about $25 million out of her own money into the campaign, because obviously she was not attractive enough for donors on the whole. So here, basically, here's the donations by sectors, so you could see which sectors are donated more to Warnock and which more to Kelly Loeffler. The orange ones are the Warnock ones, and the blue ones are for Loeffler. On the whole, you can see that she gained less. The ones that he received a lot of funds from were the electronics and communication sector, ideological section, some by attorneys and some by health, and also that she exceeded with the station. But on the whole, like I said, she dumped a whole lot of money of her own into it. I think her husband figured that it would be beneficial in the long run. Here's the spread by industry. So we have the retired is the largest chunk, and that's something odd. I've noticed that in other campaigns as well. I'm not sure why there's so many retired retirees donate. Understand something about it. Security and investments got the second spot in their real estate, PACs, lawyers, again, insurance and finance. For Warnock, it was Democratic liberals, retired again, education, and he stood by teachers quite a lot, especially with the pandemic happening, asking for support of schools during COVID and paying respectable rate for teachers and so forth. Again, lawyers, security and investment, civil servants, TV and basically the entertainment industry and human rights organizations. Well, my conclusions are that, like Purdue, Loeffler has shown a tendency to focus on enriching herself while not being particularly aligned with the right ideology, but instead slavishly aligned with Trump. She's just had a 100% voting record alongside of Trump, as I said. Warnock, on the other hand, presents as a principled moderate who is attuned with a middle-class Georgian voter and follows a religious and moralistic core guidance. So there you have it. It's quite interesting, actually, to compare the two. What's at stake is basically the Senate. The Senate after January will either be a majority by Republicans or a majority by Democrats plus the two independents. Or more accurately, they will be 50-50 if those two senators, Democratic senators, win. And if they are 50-50, then the tie-breaking vote is that of the vice president. So it would affect Democratic majority. If that does not happen, we can expect 2 years at least of complete stagnation, because we know how McConnell has acted during Obama's time, and unlikely that it will happen differently this time around. In a moment, I will show you like another bit that's kind of interesting, more so on regarding Purdue. But first, let me ask you, please, if you can share this content, if you think it's beneficial, if you think that others would enjoy it too and like to learn more about the candidate, just share it on Facebook. We're on Facebook, on Twitch, and on YouTube on channels. You can always find my material on the Progressive Update channel, on YouTube. And on the Progressive Update page on Facebook. We're also calling anyone to join the Grassroots Progressives page on Facebook, which is basically a Facebook group for progressives designed to progressive agenda forwards.